Be me, Jace, lead software developer at a mid-sized tech company. We'll call it Innovatech. Not a code monkey, but the architect. The guy they call when something is fundamentally broken at 3 a.m. I design the skeleton that the rest of the team puts the meat on. My life for the past few years has been a simple loop. Coffee, code, complex problem solving, sleep, repeat. And I was happy with it. Innovatech wasn't a paradise, but it was fair. The culture was pure, unapologetic meritocracy. If you were good, you were rewarded. If you were great, you were rewarded greatly. If you sucked, you eventually got managed out. Simple as that. The hours were long, the pressure was immense, but the pay and bonuses reflected it. You knew that your late nights and weekends spent untangling a legacy database directly translated to a bigger number on your paycheck. It was a system built on logic, and I respected it. My right-hand man was a guy named Lennon. Lennon wasn't a coder, he was a data wizard, a statistician who could make spreadsheets sing opera. While I built the engine, he analyzed the fuel consumption, predicted performance, and told us where the road was headed. We were a perfect team. My intuition for system design, his hard data to back it up. Together, we were the foundation of the company's biggest project to date, Project Odyssey. Odyssey was our moonshot, a massive next-generation platform that was supposed to redefine our industry and secure our market dominance for the next decade. It was my baby. I designed it from the first line of pseudocode on a whiteboard. The whole company's future was riding on this thing, and everyone knew it. The pressure was insane, but that's what we thrived on. We had a team of solid engineers under us. Most of them were guys like us, driven, competent, and there to get things done. Then there was Emmett. Emmett was present. He was a master of talking the talk. He could spend an hour in a meeting using every buzzword in the corporate dictionary to describe how he was going to tackle a simple task. Then he'd spend the next 3 days producing a piece of code so inefficient and buggy that it would take one of my senior guys a full day to refactor it. He was the living embodiment of the 80-20 rule, except he was the 80% of the effort that produced 20% of the results. Or maybe 10%. We all knew it, but the old management just kinda kept him around. He wasn't bad enough to fire, but not good enough to trust with anything important. He was just Emmett. For years, this was the ecosystem. It worked. The strong carried the weak, but the strong were well compensated for their strength. Then the old CEO, a no-nonsense engineer who founded the company, decided to retire. The board of directors decided they needed to modernize our image. They wanted someone with a fresh perspective, someone who understood modern corporate dynamics. That's when they hired Ariana. The announcement email was full of glowing praise. A rising star from the nonprofit world, an expert in organizational transformation, and building inclusive cultures. I didn't think much of it. A CEO is a CEO. As long as they let me build my project and sign the checks, I don't care what their background is. Lennon was more skeptical. He immediately looked her up and sent me a link to one of her TEDx talks. The title was something like Reimagining Success Beyond Profit and Performance. I watched 5 minutes of it. It was a word salad of corporate platitudes and vague promises of a more holistic and equitable workplace. I closed the tab. This was probably just fluff for the investors. The real work would continue as usual. I was wrong. So wrong. Ariana's first week was a whirlwind of meet and greets and listening sessions. She walked around the office with a permanent, high-wattage smile, asking people how they felt about their work. Not what they were working on or what roadblocks they were facing, how they felt. It was a bit strange, but whatever. New boss jitters. Then came the first all-hands meeting. She stood on the stage, not behind the podium, but pacing back and forth like she was giving another TED Talk. She didn't talk about Project Odyssey once. She didn't mention our sales figures, our market position, or our product roadmap. The entire 45-minute presentation was about our new corporate values. Words like empathy, unity, and equity were up on the big screen behind her. She announced the immediate formation of several new mandatory committees: the Diversity and Inclusion Council, the Employee Wellness Task Force, and the Cultural Harmony Committee. Emmett's hand shot up to volunteer for all three. The second major change was the arrival of Abby. Ariana introduced her as our new head of HR, brought in to help shepherd us into a new era. Abby was like a caricature of a modern HR manager. Her emails were filled with pastel-colored graphics and exclamation points. Within a week, the office was plastered with motivational posters featuring abstract shapes and vague, feel-good phrases. "Bring your whole self to work," one of them read. I just wanted to bring my laptop and my brain, but fine. Then came the email about pronoun signatures being mandatory. A few people grumbled, but nobody wanted to make a fuss. It was a small, silly thing, annoying but harmless. The first real earthquake hit about a month into Ariana's reign. It was another all-hands meeting. The mood was already a bit weird. Productivity had dipped slightly, as people were being pulled into all these new committee meetings and dialogue sessions. Ariana got on stage with a huge smile. She announced that she had spent the last month reviewing all of our internal policies to better align them with our new core value, equity. And she had come to a groundbreaking conclusion. She declared that our current system of performance-based raises and bonuses, the very foundation of our meritocratic culture, was inherently biased and created a competitive, non-inclusive environment. She said it fostered male-centric aggressive behaviors and rewarded individualistic glory-seeking over collective success. My blood ran cold. I looked over at Lennon. He was staring at the stage, completely stone-faced, but I could see a muscle twitching in his jaw. Therefore, she announced, effective immediately, the entire system was being abolished. No more merit raises, no more performance bonuses. A dead silence fell over the auditorium. You could have heard a pin drop on the carpet, she continued, seemingly oblivious to the shockwave she had just sent through the room. In the interest of fairness and predictability, every single employee, from the receptionist to the lead architect, would receive a standardized company-wide raise of 3% at the end of each year. This way, she beamed, we all rise together as a team, as a family. The silence was broken by a single person clapping. It was Emmett. He was on his feet, applauding enthusiastically. A few other slackers timidly joined in. The rest of us, the people who actually built the products that paid for this building and everyone in it, just sat there, stunned. In one 5-minute speech, Ariana had completely severed the link between effort and reward. My 80-hour work weeks, my nights spent sleeping on a beanbag chair in the server room during a crisis, Lennon's savant-like ability to find the one data point that would save a project millions. All of it was now valued exactly the same as Emmett showing up, warming a chair for 8 hours, and attending his 3 committee meetings. The message was clear. Your individual contribution no longer matters. After the meeting, the atmosphere in the office was funereal. The top performers gathered in small, quiet groups, talking in hushed tones. The usual buzz of activity was gone, replaced by a sense of quiet dread. Lennon and I went to our project room and closed the door. For a few minutes, neither of us said anything. He just pulled up a spreadsheet. It was our bonus history for the last 5 years. The numbers were substantial. They were the reason we tolerated the stress. "This is a mathematical disaster," he said finally, not looking at me. "The incentive structure is gone, completely inverted." I knew he was right. This wasn't just about the money. It was about the principle. It was a system of forced equality of outcome, and it was a direct insult to anyone who strived to be better than average. We decided not to overreact. We were professionals. We would approach this logically. We would try to reason with her. We spent the next 2 days putting together a presentation. This was our turf: logic, data, and clear communication. Lennon compiled a mountain of data. He anonymized performance metrics, code commits, bug fix rates, and feature completion times. The data was stark. It showed in indisputable black and white that the top 15% of the engineering team was responsible for over 80% of the forward progress on all projects, especially Odyssey. He even built a projection model showing the likely decline in productivity and the increased risk of project failure under the new compensation model. My part of the presentation focused on the human element and the project risk. I explained that top-tier talent is motivated by challenge and recognition. Take away the recognition, and they will eventually seek the challenge elsewhere. I laid out the catastrophic risk to Project Odyssey if even a few key people from that top 15% were to leave. I explained that their institutional knowledge was irreplaceable in the short term. We weren't threatening. We were stating facts. We were trying to save the company from its new leader. We scheduled a meeting with Ariana. Abby, the HR head, was also required to attend. We walked into Ariana's large corner office. It had been redecorated. The old CEO's framed patents and architectural diagrams were gone, replaced by abstract art and framed photos of her at various conferences. We sat down. The atmosphere was chilly. I started by saying we wanted to talk about the new compensation policy and its potential impact on high-priority projects. Ariana smiled that same fixed smile. "I'm always open to feedback," she said, in a tone that suggested the exact opposite. Lennon put his laptop on the table and started walking them through the data. He was polite, clinical, and objective. He pointed to the graphs showing the massive disparity in output. "As you can see," he said, "a small core of individuals provides a disproportionately large amount of the value. The previous system, while perhaps imperfect, recognized and incentivized this reality." Ariana didn't even look at the screen. She was looking at us. "What you call value, Lennon," she said slowly, "I call a symptom of a toxic competitive culture. This data doesn't show me who our stars are. It shows me who has been hogging resources and refusing to collaborate." I was floored. She was twisting our data into an indictment of our work ethic. I jumped in, trying to bring it back to the practical risk. "Ariana, this isn't about competition. This is about keeping the people who built Odyssey from the ground up motivated and engaged. If they feel their extraordinary efforts are no longer valued, they might leave. We can't afford to lose them, not now." That's when Abby spoke for the first time. "Jace, I'm hearing a lot of I and they in your language," she said, in a soft, condescending tone. "What I'm not hearing is we. Our goal is to foster a sense of collective ownership. People shouldn't be motivated by individual bonuses, but by our shared mission." Her use of HR speak was like a weapon, deflecting every logical point we made. I tried one last time. "With all due respect, our mission is to launch Project Odyssey successfully. That mission is now in serious jeopardy. We're proposing a compromise. Keep the flat 3% raise, but reintroduce project-based bonuses for meeting critical deadlines. That way, team success is rewarded, but it's still tied to actual performance." It was a perfectly reasonable middle ground solution. Ariana leaned forward, her smile finally gone. "Let me be very clear," she said, her voice dropping. "The era of the rock star developer at this company is over. We are building a family, not a collection of mercenaries. Your proposal to create special rewards for a select few is the very definition of the inequitable system I was hired to dismantle." She then looked at us, one by one. "Frankly, I'm disappointed. I expected our senior leaders to champion this new vision, not to cling to old problematic structures. Perhaps you need to ask yourselves if you're truly aligned with the future of this company." It wasn't a discussion. It was a lecture, a threat, wrapped in the language of corporate progressivism. We were dismissed, not just from her office, but from the entire conversation about the company's future. We walked out of her office without saying another word. The door clicked shut behind us. We stood in the hallway for a moment. The cheerful Unity poster on the wall seemed to mock us. We didn't need to say anything. We both knew what had just happened. We had presented a logical, data-backed argument, and we had been rejected by an ideological wall. Our concerns weren't just ignored. They were framed as a moral failing on our part. We were the problem for wanting our contributions to be recognized. We went back to our project room. Lennon closed the door. He opened his laptop, but this time he didn't pull up a spreadsheet. He pulled up a job search website. "The math doesn't work anymore, Jace," he said quietly. "The risk-reward ratio is broken." I nodded, looking at the complex architectural diagram for Odyssey on the whiteboard. My baby. It felt like a betrayal, not just by Ariana, but by the company I had poured my life into. The pride I felt in my work was suddenly tangled up with a deep, cold anger. The company was actively working against its own interests. It was choosing to reward mediocrity and punish excellence, all in the name of a vaguely defined, feel-good ideology. In the days that followed, the change was palpable. Emmett was a new man. He was practically levitating. He was appointed the lead of the Cultural Harmony Committee. He stopped even pretending to code. His days were now filled with organizing lunch and learns, about unconscious bias, and planning the company's next mandatory team-building event, which was going to be a non-competitive drum circle. I'm not even kidding. He was constantly praised in company-wide emails by Ariana and Abby, and for his positive energy and commitment to our shared values. Meanwhile, the morale of the actual engineering team cratered. The top guys who used to stay late to push a feature over the finish line now packed up and left at 5 p.m. sharp. The passionate debates about the best way to implement a new algorithm were replaced by quiet, listless meetings where no one wanted to stick their neck out. Why bother? Excellence and apathy now received the same 3% reward. The final nail in the coffin for me was a specific incident with Odyssey. A critical component of the data processing pipeline, a module Emmett had insisted on owning to show his newfound leadership, was failing under stress tests. It was a complete mess. The logic was flawed, it was inefficient, and it was threatening to delay the entire launch schedule. My team lead came to me, exasperated. He'd tried to get Emmett to fix it for a week, but Emmett was always too busy with his committee duties. So I did what I always did. I fixed it. I stayed up all night, untangled his spaghetti code, and rewrote the entire module from scratch. I optimized it, tested it, and pushed the fix at 4 a.m. The project was back on track. I didn't expect a parade. A simple thank you would have been nice. What I got was a company-wide email from Abby the next afternoon. The email was about the power of collaboration. It praised Emmett by name for spearheading the effort to fix the data pipeline. It included a quote from him about how, by working together, we were able to overcome this challenge as a team. It mentioned my contribution in a single passing sentence, one with support from Jace and the core engineering team. I was a footnote in the story of my own work, while the man who caused the problem was hailed as the hero for leading the solution. That was it. That was the moment the switch flipped. It wasn't about the money anymore. It was about respect. It was about truth. The company was now actively creating a false reality, a corporate gaslighting campaign, where slackers were champions and builders were relegated to support. I walked over to Lennon's desk. He was looking at the same email, a look of utter disgust on his face. I didn't even have to say anything. I just pulled out my phone and opened a messaging app. I sent him a link to my updated professional networking profile. He looked at it, then back at me. He gave a slow, deliberate nod. He typed for a few seconds, and my phone buzzed. It was a link to his profile, also updated. The silent pact was made. We weren't just leaving. We were going to be strategic about it. We had a few conversations that week, all outside the office. We weren't going to storm out in a blaze of glory. That's what they would expect. We were going to be professionals. We would do our jobs, document our work, and find new positions. The tech world is small. We both started putting out feelers very discreetly to our contacts at other companies. The response was immediate and overwhelming. It turns out that when you're one of the best at what you do, companies are very interested in talking to you, especially when your current employer has gone demonstrably insane. Lennon had 3 interviews lined up within a week. I had 4. We both got a call from the same company. It was our biggest direct competitor, the one company that could truly leverage our knowledge of Odyssey's architecture against Innovatech. They knew exactly who we were. They had been trying to poach us for years. They made us an offer we couldn't refuse. Not just a massive pay increase, but a compensation package heavily weighted with performance bonuses tied directly to the success of the project they wanted us to lead. It was a meritocracy, a place where our skills would be valued and rewarded. We accepted, both of us, on the same day. We now had a plan, a quiet, coordinated exit strategy. We decided on the timing. It had to be the moment of maximum impact, the point where our absence would be most deeply and immediately felt, 2 weeks before the scheduled launch of Project Odyssey. After all the core features were supposed to be locked in, but before the final, frantic bug fixing and deployment phase, the period when the architects of the system are most critical. It felt cold, it felt calculated. But then I thought about that meeting in Ariana's office. I thought about Emmett getting credit for my work. And I realized this wasn't an act of revenge. It was an act of logic, a natural consequence. We were simply moving from an irrational system to a rational one. The company had made its choice. Now, we were making ours. The 2 weeks leading up to our departure were surreal. It was like living in a slow-motion movie where only we knew the ending. We went to work every day. We attended the meetings. We wrote code, but on the inside, we were already gone. We spent most of our time meticulously documenting everything. I created architectural diagrams so clean and clear a first-year intern could understand them. Lennon organized his data models and reports into a perfectly indexed archive. We were leaving no room for them to claim we sabotaged anything. We were professionals to the very end, building the case for our own competence even as we packed our bags. The office culture, meanwhile, continued its nosedive into parody. Abby from HR sent out a memo announcing Mindful Mondays, where the first hour of the work week would be dedicated to silent meditation and journaling about our feelings. An engineer asked in the company chat if this meant the project deadlines were being pushed back by an hour each week. His message was deleted by a moderator, and he received a private warning from HR about undermining wellness initiatives. Emmett was in his element. He proposed a compliment circle to kick off every engineering meeting, where each person had to say something positive about the person to their right. It was excruciating. The compliments were so generic and forced. I really admire the way you type on your keyboard. Productivity on Project Odyssey slowed to a crawl. The team was rudderless. The competent people were demoralized and quiet quitting, doing the bare minimum. The incompetent people were loud, empowered, and spent all their time in committee meetings. Ariana seemed to think everything was going great. She'd walk the floor, smiling, telling everyone how much more positive and collaborative the energy felt. She was like a captain, praising the beautiful weather while the ship was taking on water, completely oblivious to the groaning of the hull beneath her feet. Finally, the day came. It was a Monday, 2 weeks to the day before the scheduled launch. Lennon and I walked into Abby's office together, right after the mandatory meditation hour. We each placed a plain white envelope on her desk. She looked at them, then at us, a flicker of confusion on her face. "What's this?" she asked, her cheerful HR voice in full effect. "That's my 2 weeks' notice," I said. "Mine as well," Lennon added. The smile vanished from her face. It was like watching a mask fall off. She opened the envelopes. Her eyes scanned the letters. For the first time, I saw a genuine human emotion from her: panic. She went through the standard HR playbook, but her heart wasn't in it. She asked if this was about compensation, saying we could have a dialogue about our total rewards package. I told her it wasn't about the money. It was about the company's direction and the valuation of technical contribution. Lennon simply said his decision was final. She tried a different tactic: guilt. She talked about the team, about Project Odyssey, about how we were letting everyone down at such a critical moment. "The team is precisely why we're leaving," Lennon said, his voice flat and emotionless. "We can't be part of a system that we fundamentally believe is set up for failure." She stared at us, realizing her usual scripts weren't working. "Ariana is not going to be happy about this," she said, which was meant to be a threat. "I'm sure she'll find a collaborative, team-based solution," I replied, without a hint of sarcasm. We stood up to leave. We had said all we needed to say. As we walked out, we heard her on the phone, her voice high-pitched and frantic. We went back to our desks. We sent the official resignation emails to our teams and to Ariana, CCing Abby. The news spread through the engineering department like a shockwave. Within an hour, 3 more emails hit the team's inbox: our lead database administrator, our top security specialist, and one of our best senior front-end developers, all of them resigning. It was a quiet exodus of the competent. They had been waiting, watching, to see what we would do. Our departure was the signal they needed. The ship was officially sinking, and the smart ones were heading for the lifeboats. Ariana never spoke to me or Lennon directly. She sent a single company-wide email that afternoon. It was a masterpiece of corporate spin. She announced that some team members who were not fully aligned with our new collaborative vision have decided to pursue other opportunities. She wished us well in a single dismissive sentence. The email then went on to say that this was an exciting opportunity to promote from within and empower new voices. And then came the punchline. She announced that, effective immediately, Emmett was being promoted to Director of Engineering and would be taking over leadership of Project Odyssey. I had to read that sentence 3 times to believe it. It was the most perfect, most poetically insane decision she could have possibly made. It was a move so completely divorced from logic and reality that it was almost beautiful in its stupidity. She hadn't just ignored our warnings. She had taken our warnings, lit them on fire, and then promoted the very embodiment of the problem we were talking about. The next 2 weeks were a strange, hollow experience. We did our knowledge transfer. We handed over our documentation. Our meetings were with a bewildered-looking junior developer who was smart enough to know he was being set up to fail. Emmett, in his new role as director, was too busy to meet with us. He was busy measuring his new office, picking out furniture, and running his cultural harmony meetings, which were now mandatory for the entire department. The remaining engineers on the Odyssey team looked like ghosts. Their faces were pale with stress and resignation. They knew what was coming. On our last day, we packed our personal belongings into a couple of cardboard boxes. No one threw a farewell party. No one signed a card. It was a quiet, unceremonious end to years of work. As we were walking out, one of the senior engineers, one of the few good ones left who was trapped by family circumstances, pulled me aside. "It's a complete disaster in there," he whispered. "Emmett doesn't understand the system architecture. He keeps demanding changes that are technically impossible. The code is breaking all over the place. They're just patching it with duct tape and prayers." He looked at me, his eyes full of despair. "Launch is going to be a bloodbath." I just nodded. "I know." We walked out of that building for the last time and didn't look back. The launch day for Project Odyssey arrived 2 weeks later. Lennon and I were at our new jobs. We were already deep into planning our competitor's answer to Odyssey. But that day, we weren't working. We were in a conference room with the Innovatech launch day livestream on the big monitor. My phone was buzzing constantly. It was a private group chat with some of the other guys who had quit. The schadenfreude was off the charts. The livestream started. Ariana was on stage in front of a huge Project Odyssey, The Future is Equitable banner. She gave a 10-minute speech about collaboration, unity, and how the project was a testament to their new culture, where every voice was valued equally. She gave a special shout-out to Emmett, the new director of engineering, for stepping up and leading the team to the finish line. The camera panned to Emmett in the front row. He looked like a deer in headlights. Then came the moment of truth. "And now," Ariana said with a flourish, "I am proud to declare that Project Odyssey is officially live." The audience of employees and industry press applauded politely. On the screen behind her, the official product website was supposed to appear. Instead, a generic server error page flashed up. "Error 503, service unavailable." A nervous murmur went through the crowd. Ariana's smile faltered for a second. "Just a small technical hiccup, folks. The demand is probably overwhelming our servers," she said, trying to laugh it off. My phone buzzed. A message from our old colleague still inside. "It's not demand. The main application server cluster just crashed. It's not coming back up." On the live stream, a stagehand scurried up and whispered something in Ariana's ear. Her face went white. For the next hour, we watched a public, slow-motion train wreck. They managed to get a stripped-down version of the site online, but it was barely functional. User registration was broken. The payment processing module, a complex piece of code I had personally designed, was throwing catastrophic errors, according to my source. People's credit cards were either being rejected or, in some cases, charged multiple times. The core features, the ones meant to be the main selling points, were either missing or completely non-functional. Social media exploded. The official project hashtag was trending for all the wrong reasons. It was a torrent of angry customers, confused users, and mocking competitors. Screenshots of error messages and broken UI elements were everywhere. Tech journalists who were in the audience started live tweeting the disaster. Innovatech's Odyssey launch is looking more like the Titanic's maiden voyage. It was worse than we ever could have imagined. We thought it would be buggy and unstable. We didn't think it would be a complete, public implosion on this scale. The live stream was abruptly cut. The fallout in the days that followed was brutal. The company's stock price plummeted by over 30%. Major tech news outlets published scathing articles with titles like "How Innovatech's Culture-First Approach Led to Catastrophic Failure" and "The Cautionary Tale of Project Odyssey." But the most damaging blow came from Glassdoor. The anonymous employee review site became a public square for every disgruntled Innovatech employee, past and present, to air their grievances. 5 of us who quit had coordinated. We all posted detailed, professional, and utterly devastating reviews of our experience under the new management. We described the abolition of merit-based pay. We talked about how top performers were ignored while political players were promoted. We detailed how technical expertise was dismissed in favor of ideological conformity. We named no names, but everyone knew who we were talking about. Our reviews opened the floodgates. Dozens of other current and former employees added their own stories. The company's rating dropped from a 4.5 to a 1.8 in the span of a week. It became a public record of Ariana's failure, a detailed account of how she had systematically dismantled a successful engineering culture and replaced it with a dysfunctional mess. We didn't hear anything for about a month. We were busy working. Then I got a message from my old contact inside. It was a link to a press release. The headline was simple: Innovatech announces leadership transition. I clicked the link. The board of directors had fired Ariana. The statement was full of polite corporate language about thanking her for her service and wishing her the best in her future endeavors. But the message was clear. She was out. The press release also mentioned that Emmett had decided to step down to pursue other interests. The board had installed an interim CEO, a veteran tech executive known as a ruthless turnaround specialist. His first act, according to the news, was to lay off the entire HR department, including Abby. A week later, Lennon sent me another link. It was an article on a business news site about Ariana. It was a sort of "where is she now" piece. It turned out no one in the tech world would touch her. The failure of Odyssey was so public